Hi again, fellow unlicensed thinkers. I've been thinking about this and what's going to happen in the world. So I wanted to give you my predictions, what I intuit, what I see as coming in 2021. I think the world's going to be a very different place in 2021 than it has been in 2020. There is a pendulum, a social pendulum that has swung very far and needs to come back in order to be a little bit more centered, a little bit more balanced. Now, will that mean that it'll swing really far in the other way? Who knows? That tends to be the what happens in history, so maybe it will, maybe we can kind of get it to land a little bit more in the center. But before I move into too many of these predictions, I want to ask you if you can go ahead and hit that like button for me. I can't quite reach it. And you can also hit the subscribe button to get daily psychology, philosophy, and spirituality. So if that's of interest to you, hit subscribe. I do this every day. All right, so on to these predictions for 2021. One of the big things that I see in the world today is that we've gone really far into egoic happiness. And this is not a recent thing. This is something that's been going on for a very long time. And I think that in 2021, we're going to start seeing that back off a little bit. We're going to go from that egoic happiness to more true happiness of the soul. So the egoic happiness would be, I need a boat, I need a bigger TV, I need the newest cell phone, I need to look really good on Instagram, that kind of thing. And I think we're going to move more into the true happiness of the soul. I think that's really important for our society, but that's one of the things that I see making a big shift in 2021. I also see less reliance on a lot of the vices that we've been using. And when I say vices, I also mean devices. So I see a big change in that. There's going to be a lot less people like addicted to their devices and needing to see exactly what's going on. I think there's going to be a big change in that as we move through 2021. Excuse me. Some of the other vices that I see we're going to have a lot less of is maybe junk food and alcohol, things like promiscuity. I don't want to get into that too much, but just things that generally don't give us a sense of real self-satisfaction, a real sense of self-worth. They're just kind of fill-ins, like watching too much TV or junk food or something like that. So I think a lot of these things are going to kind of go by the wayside. And along with that, I think we're going to see an increase in that true self-awareness. So I was talking about the true happiness, but I think we'll also see an increase in true self-awareness. Because again, this pendulum has swung really far one way, and I don't see a lot of self-awareness out in the world. I see a mask of self-awareness in a lot of people where they kind of believe that they are self-aware, but they haven't really done a lot of the soul searching and the digging into becoming self-aware, and instead what they see as self-awareness is their indoctrination into their groups, their tribes, their crowds, whatever it might be. And they believe that to be a self-awareness. But I think a more true self-awareness is going to come about where people are starting to listen to their inner beings, to their soul, to their heart, and are really going to start putting that over the crowd awareness, so to speak. They're going to have that true self-awareness. They're going to look at what truly makes them happy. And so that goes into a return to a more spiritual and maybe religious way of thinking, because one of the things that I always talk about is that there is a hole in our psyche and our self that it wants a God. It wants something that it can look up to, that it can be accountable to, that it can be part of this something bigger that isn't a society or a group, but that is something more magnificently bigger, like call it God, universe, whatever you like, maybe karma or morals. Those are things that can be something bigger than self, something that you can look toward and say, I'm accountable to that. I'm responsible for my actions in that area. I must be consistent with those morals, just like, say, a religion would teach. You follow these commandments no matter what. Well, that's the same idea with morals. And I think we're going to see a lot more return to that, where people are going to stop saying, well, because I like that person or because that person is part of my tribe, I'm going to let them get away with something different, something I wouldn't let another person get away with. And I think we're going to see a change from that, where people are going to start saying, no, you're just as accountable as the person that I don't like. And I think this tend towards the more spiritual is going to be a little bit bigger than the trending towards religious, although I do see a lot more people becoming religious. And I also see a lot of religious people taking on a lot of this more spiritual, personal power kind of an idea. So, along with that spirituality, I'm going to bring in a little bit of law of attraction, because I think this is actually going to be on the rise in 2021, and a realization that we're all working together to create what we see as reality, and we're all doing our part to bring good into the world. And so often I see people that just want to lash out and just want to attack somebody, and that really doesn't bring any good into the world. There isn't a benefit in lashing out. There isn't a benefit in self-doubt. We want to start, and I see that we will start really understanding our part in this. So every time we lash out, we're putting bad into the world, which means that we're going to get bad out of the world. And I think there's going to be a bigger realization of that co-creation that we're doing, that working together, and that trying to bring ourselves up by bringing other people up, as opposed to thinking we can bring ourselves up by bringing other people down. So I see a big change in that. I mean, the internet is just rife with all of that kind of insanity of people wanting to be mean. And so also I see this individual consciousness, this individuation over collectivism being a big thing that's going to come about in 2021. Along with the spiritual, I see a lot of people going into doing more meditation, more shadow work and shadow integration. And so really not looking at what is out in the world as the problem, but realizing that what we see out in the world is what we are projecting onto the world, and looking internally to fix the problems, as opposed to saying, you're this, you're that, you're bad, you're this. Looking inside and saying, well, why does that upset me? What about me can I fix that would make it so that that doesn't upset me anymore? And for those of you who haven't done shadow work, I have actually done a couple of videos on it. Probably the biggest one is about how to not get offended, because that's where your shadow work starts, is in that idea. But I see a lot more people understanding this idea that they are the ones projecting, not saying those people over there are projecting, but realizing the things that you see in the world are things that you are projecting into the world. The things that you see in others are things that you are projecting onto those others. And that's going to be a big change as far as 2021 goes, because shadow work is a very difficult thing. It's not something that people just happen upon and you happen to do here and there. I think it really is, along with that true self-awareness, that people are going to start saying, wait a minute, that problem isn't something with that person over there. That's something that I actually have a problem with and that I'm trying to hide from myself. And so therefore I'm pushing it onto that other person so that I don't have to take responsibility for it. I don't have to fix it. And so again, I see more people looking internally, accepting these parts of themselves so that they can understand that it's not about them projecting it, or not about it being a problem with other people, but about it being a problem with themselves. And now I'll add that I don't think that the election is going to make a difference, like as far as who wins the election. I mean, again, that's just in the US. what I see is a more global issue with a lot of these problems that I'm talking about, especially in the Western world. I think that the election will have an impact in that people won't have that as a distraction anymore. So whatever happens, happens, right? So it doesn't matter who wins as far as all of this goes that I'm talking about. I do have my predictions on that, but I'm going to leave that off this video. Doesn't really matter, because what does matter is that people are being very distracted by these divisive politics. And so they're stuck in that. They're stuck on those politics. And once that bubble, so to speak, bursts, and I'll talk about another bubble in a second here too. I didn't realize I had two bubbles in my notes. But there is that bubble that's just, or balloon that's expanding and expanding with all this pressure. And it's getting in the way of people looking internally because they're so afraid. They're pointing and they're running around and they're screaming and they're scared and they're worried. But once whatever happens in the election happens, there isn't that to look at anymore. So that balloon just explodes and it dissipates and it's not in the way anymore. And so people can start looking internally and they can start saying, oh, I see, back to the shadow work and the shadow integration. I realize that I'm projecting a lot of my things because now that I'm not so focused on the politics, I can take excuse me, in the external world, I can take a look at me and I can say, what can I fix about me? So this monster over here is now gone, and now I can look at the monster that's in here and in here. And the final thing that I really have is that a lot of ideas, along with this idea of the pendulum swinging too far, a lot of ideas that are going on in society presently are just unsustainable. There is kind of a, excuse me, there's kind of a madness that has taken hold that really is unsustainable. You see ideas out there that are starting to destroy themselves. So perhaps they started with the most beautiful intentions, but now they've gone too far. It's like the warrior, the soldier that doesn't realize that the war is over and they're still out there fighting it. And so what they're doing is they're turning everything into an enemy. And they used to have an enemy called those guys over there that were the bad guys or whatever. And now that enemy turned into other people that they just didn't like. And then that enemy turned into maybe their pets. And then it turned, well, okay, now so I've dealt with all those enemies. What else is my enemy? That tree over there is my enemy. That rock is my enemy. And so you have all of these warriors that are looking for enemies and not realizing that they already won the war. They won the war years ago and everything is fine and they can relax and they can move on to other pursuits. And I think that they will realize that they can move on to these other pursuits now that the madness of the election has gone, now that there is a rise in spirituality and this individuation and this realization that most things, we see the world not as it is, but as we are, and that it is our shadow aspects that we need to be working on. But there's a lot of these bad ideas, and the societal pendulum has swung so far. And I called it, like I said, there'd be another bubble, and that's what it is. These bad ideas, they're just getting more and more inflated, and you see people that were on the same side going after each other because one person doesn't believe this exact thing exactly right, and that's got to end. It's unsustainable. Eventually, if that were to continue, we'd literally be a world of individual people who hated everybody else because they didn't believe exactly like we did. And I mean, come on, that is not diversity. That is not interesting. That is not a good place to live. That is a world full of people who all hate each other. And that just is absolutely unsustainable. So a lot of this postmodernist thinking is absolutely going to come to an end because it really is eating itself. Again, it may have started with a good idea, but it has turned into this demoralization, and I have videos on demoralization as well. The one from just a few days ago, I'll make sure I get it in the links there. This demoralization, it is destroying everybody. It's telling everybody that they're bad, they're not good enough, they're not worthy, there's some problem with them. And like I said in that video, no, you're all great. You all deserve the best things. You all deserve great things. So this postmodernism is going to destroy itself. It is destroying itself. And I think in 2021, we're going to see that really kind of take off. And we're going to see a lot more of this postmodernist thinking just sort of dissipate, because again, it can only go so far before everyone starts to look at it and goes, that's not quite right. So again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about what direction 2021 is going to go. Be sure to hit the like button and, of course, subscribe and share, because that gets me out there a little bit more, and maybe we can help somebody else out. All right, have a